David, can we talk about my favorite topic, that is the power of words?
Oh, thank you. Um, so, in the book of Proverbs, there's this wonderful saying. I'll see if I can quote it well. It says, "A word fitly spoken, or maybe it's words fitly spoken, are like apples of gold in pictures of silver." And it's such a beautiful proverb. Um, so, it's saying, well, that a word that's fitly spoken is like an apples of gold. Gold is a symbol of love. So it's like golden apples. And we can imbue the words that we speak with the power of love. And love has all kinds of shapes and forms and disguises. So it's not always whatever we might think it would be. It's not always hearts and flowers, but it is always itself. And we can take that power of love that moves through the heart and we can invest it in our words. And so that's the apples of gold part. And then the pictures of silver has to do with the setting. And in fact, in some translations of the Bible, that word picture is translated as setting. But you might think of the picture frame or the setting in which that apple is sitting. And so that goes back to the fitly spoken part, because when we're careful about speaking the word that would be just right for that person at that time, and we just have a care to say the right thing for them, not that we're all uptight about it, but just that we have an interest in saying the right thing, the most creative thing that we could say. And then we say that with love. It's a beautiful thing for another person or for a circumstance. And I believe that's a very powerful spiritual practice. So when a person has a care about the tone and the form of the words that they speak, then over time, they're cultivating the ability to express the love that's within them in a way that is fitting in the world in which they live. And every circumstance calls for a different form of love. But nonetheless, as we practice, it becomes an art to speak that word that should be spoken in whatever the context. And something else happens when a person adopts that spiritual practice and practices that art. Everything in us begins to line up to be a part of that spiritual practice. So our mind has now just gotten a job, which is a good thing, because sometimes our mind gives us jobs. So that's another topic. But if you give your mind the job to speak the word that is fitly spoken, your mind gets busy. It begins to work in its really magical way, and it begins to think, oh, what is that word? It opens itself to think that word so that that word could be spoken. And the mind becomes more and more intelligent and more creative, more and more orderly, so that it can be an instrument to give your mouth those words. Your mouth can't speak them all by itself. It needs your mind to just open up, and then it needs your heart too. So all too often, the heart is just reactive to what's happening around. But the heart is meant to be a resonant capacity. And if you tell your heart that you need your heart to be open to resonate love and invest love into your words, now your heart is getting conditioned to the flow of love that's coming down from wherever it's coming from into you and out through you. So your heart is transforming. It's changing to be an instrument of what you want to express. So often, we have a heart and we have a mind, but so often for people, their mind is bossing them around and telling them what they ought to be fearful of. And they go, oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'll be fearful. Or their heart is telling them why they ought to be resentful and jealous and envious and fearful. And their heart is telling them to be all those things. Well, we're bigger than what we feel. And we're bigger than what we think. So when we're masters of those things, we're asking of our own capacities to work for us, to create for us, and be what we need them to be so that we can be who we need to be in the world, and we can say what we need to say. That's a very powerful spiritual practice for anybody. I know it's been that for me all my life.
David, my oldest daughter told me to ask you, how can we help the planet and how can we help the injustice that is in the planet? We have to talk from love, but at the same time, we don't have to say negative word. So
Right, right. There's an art there, isn't there? You know, I'm not into having my head in the cloud. You know,
mhm,
the world is the way it is.
mhm,
I think we're much more powerful when we can face the world the way it is and
mhm,
recognize the way it is. But seeing what it is and saying something and living in a way that's relevant and helpful for our world
mhm,
is not the same as being reactive to it.
mhm,
And all too often we become emotionally reactive. We become mentally reactive. We get angry. We get mad. We get fearful. And then our lives become about combating something that's been created by other people. And then really we become powerless. We're not really bringing a solution. We're just railing against the problem. And then we're just sucked in and we become part of the problem.
mhm.
And that's no good for us and it's no good for the world. So seeing what we see, I do think we need to open up to what the real answer is and think deeply and wisely about what the answer is. How did the world get to be this way? How did all this pollution come about? Why are people fighting each other? Why are politicians lying? Why are people with a lot of money manipulating? And why is the general population allowing themselves to be so manipulated, so taken in, so ignorant? What is the root of all that? And then how do those same problems configure in my own life experience? And how do I turn it around for myself? I think those are really deep questions. So here at Sunrise Ranch, we say the root of all those problems and the answer to those problems is spiritual in nature. And we speak about spiritual regeneration. So we see a culture that seems to be disintegrating in so many ways. The family's disintegrating. The institution of marriage is disintegrating. Our schools and our educational system seems to be disintegrating. Our politics are disintegrating. How does it all regenerate? How does it find that regenerative quality? Well, we believe that the source of that is spiritual. And when we say spiritual, we mean it's within me and within you. The wisdom that I have within me, that I have natural access to, and the love and the creative source of all things that's within me. You can call it whatever you want, but that within me, I've somehow lost touch with as a human being. And if I look around at the human beings around me, I'm not the only one. But the solution has to start someplace. Somebody's got to access that and then radiate it and express it in the world and set a new pattern. And cultural degeneration doesn't get turned around except by that, by spiritual regeneration. And if we have spiritual regeneration that I'm knowing and you're knowing, we can initiate a cultural regeneration that begins with spiritual regeneration in people. And then we can find the solution for all the problems that are out there. And that's all important. But we have to find the right starting place, because I don't think all the bright ideas that are out there in the world, whether they're social or technological or scientific, I don't think all those bright ideas are really going to change things if we don't have a different premise for the human experience. So I think we really need to find that as human beings, for ourselves, first of all, but then for the world in which we live.